academic engagement at Kentucky Campus Compact, and I'll be facilitating the majority of this training today. Laura?
Hi all, I am Laura Weaver. I am with Indiana Campus Compact, and I am our Director of Professional Development and Engaged Learning. And I just put in the chat that if you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can feel free to send me a private chat, and I'll be monitoring the chat for everyone today as well. Thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you, Laura. Brenna, would you like to say hi and introduce yourself?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. My name is Brenna Limbrick, and I'm with Ohio Campus Compact, the director, as the Director of Member Engagement, here to help out with logistics and as needed.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So here's our plan for today. We're going to continue with introductions to just, for any folks that aren't familiar with Campus Compact, a 30-second overview there. Then the majority of our time will be spent covering the methodology behind living room conversations. We'll have an opportunity to practice and then close with any questions. So for anyone that's not familiar with Campus Compact, here is our mission statement. And Campus Compact is a national coalition that Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky are all a part of. And we're made up of over 1,000 colleges and universities that are committed to these civic and social responsibility principles, and particularly of importance for our purposes here today, being vital agents and architects of a diverse democracy. So if anybody is not a member of Campus Compact and is this joining us for the first time and would like more information, please let our respective representatives from Ohio, Indiana, or Kentucky know, and we'd love to talk to you more about that. Excuse me. So we know that one conversation on this topic is not going to be enough, and 3 conversations on this topic probably isn't going to be enough. But we're really appreciative of you joining us for this series of staying engaged in a conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And hopefully this is part of some other things that are going on either on your campus or in your community, that this is either giving you a toolkit that you could use in other places or helping inform some of those other activities that are happening on your campus. So let's get into what is living room conversations. So my favorite thing about living room conversations is that they were doing this pre-COVID. They were hosting online dialogues, connecting people across the country to talk about important issues before we all moved on to Zoom. So they had this structure that was operating really well. And so I found that it's helpful to replicate now that we're all on Zoom. So what it is a way to bring small groups together, typically 4 to 7, which we'll use. On a call, we'll be using Zoom for 90 minutes. And the point is to listen and be heard and hear others. So we're really listening to share and to learn and talking to share and to learn rather than debating or convincing. So the high-level overview of the structure is that for each question within those groups, folks will have about 2 minutes to answer that question without interruption or crosstalk. After everybody has answered, the group can take a few minutes to ask clarifying or follow-up questions and have some of that cross conversation. So as facilitators, we're asking that you'll be a designated timer and that you'll record some of those themes that are emerging out of your conversations to be able to report those out in the all group closing. So what I'm going to do next is move over to our resources. And if you can bear with me for a minute, I have to leave the PowerPoint. Let's see. So there's a resource guide for each of the 3 conversations. We're going to focus on the first one today. And if we find that folks need to do this for each one, that's totally fine. We can do a preview for each resource guide as needed, but they follow similar formats. So we're going to focus on the race conversation guide today. These are all available in the Google Calendar invitation that Laura sent out. So there's 3 links with attachments there that outline the race, ethnicity, and then wrap-up conversations. And then we'll also have those attached for each of the session invitations. Okay, so you're welcome. I've got this on screen share. You're welcome to pull it up. And we start with, this is just basically the introduction that we already went over about what is living room conversations and how it operates. And the point of making these available is that anyone can host using these instructions. So they're really user-friendly. The way that we'll do it is we'll do some of this introduction with the whole group when we gather together for the first conversation series. So welcome people, introduce them to what living room conversations is, and we'll also do the conversation agreements all together as a group. So we'll go through, I'm jumping down to number 2 here, how we'll engage. So these conversation agreements around being curious and listening to understand, showing respect, suspending judgment, common ground as well as differences, authentic and welcome, purposeful and to the point, and own and guide the conversation. We'll talk about those together. Then we'll go into our breakout rooms with facilitators, and that's where we'll ask you to start with introductions and why we're here. So each participant has 1 minute to introduce themselves, kind of some things that we're doing in the chat right now. Your name, where you're coming from, what brought you here, and if you have any experience with living room conversations. Then you'll jump down to the question rounds. So round 1 in living room conversations is always getting to know who's there a little bit deeper. So you invite folks to answer one of the following questions and giving them some options of how they'd like to engage. So I think a good tip for this would be when you're in your breakout rooms, copying and pasting these into the chat box that would be specific to your breakout room. And that way people aren't overwhelmed getting the whole guide all at once, but they're getting fed prompts as needed. So the first one is getting to know each other more deeply. You could paste these 3 over into the chat and invite folks to take 1 or 2 minutes to answer one of these questions. So this will be the first practice of everyone goes around, and then there's an opportunity for crosstalk. Round 2, we get into why we're convening here today. So it's helpful to remind people based on some of these, sorry, that highlighting doesn't work well on here on the screen share. Remind people why we're gathering around this conversation. So you can invite folks to read this paragraph or alternate between the facilitator or volunteers, however you have that participation lined up. But you're going to review this background of why we're gathering here today, as well as some common definitions that we're going to be using. We'll also share these in preparation for the session, so folks are coming into it with, some expectations around how we'll be using certain terms. So after that introduction, we go into another round. Again, you're sharing you can share these questions at once, or you can do one question at a time. You probably are not, with 2 minutes apiece, you're not going to get through all of these questions. So you can kind of judge how the group is moving if you want to share 2 or 3 questions at once and invite people to answer, or if you want to do one at a time, or if you want to prioritize based on, your preference as a facilitator. But this will be the same, that everyone gets 2 minutes. And so when you're timing as a facilitator there, if folks aren't able to fill those 2 minutes, that's totally okay. We can respect that silence and their space. It gives the group and everyone some time to process and reflect, and then move on to the next person after that 2 minutes has been allotted for each individual. So here's some of the conversations that we'll be using specifically about race. And then the final round is reflecting on the conversation. And so this would be a checkout where you ask them to answer one of the following. Again, it'd be helpful to paste this over in the chat. What was meaningful or valuable to you? What have you gained from this? And ask folks to check out there. After that, we'll all come back together and the facilitators will report out for their groups. Okay. So I'm going to go back to our presentation. Oh, excuse me. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is practice this together. So what Laura has done is she's arranged us in groups of 4 to practice the breakout conversations. And so we'll use the same guidelines, 2 minutes apiece, and we'll need 1 person to volunteer to keep time there since we don't have designated facilitators. But we'll do 2 minutes apiece, And your question is, what are your doubts and reservations going into this conversation series? And if you don't have doubts or reservations, what are the possibilities that you could imagine? So introduce yourself, and then you're going to respond to that question 2 minutes apiece. So Laura will set the timer for 10 minutes, if that's all right. So folks have 2 minutes to talk each, and then some time, 2 minutes for crosstalk and conversation. Then we'll come back together for big questions. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and turn over to Laura. Welcome back, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed getting to know a couple folks and practicing the living room conversations. A couple points that I did want to make are that Living Room Conversations does these on a whole, range of topics. And so if there's a different topic that you're interested in hosting, I highly recommend checking out their guides. And I recommend, each of us as facilitators spending a little bit of time getting comfortable with that guide. And it's really there to support you as almost a script, but you definitely want to be comfortable with it going in. So instead of a traditional checkout, what we're going to do closing wise is, and I put these in reverse order. The first thing is, if you need to contact any of us, me, myself, Laura, and Brenna's contact information is in the Google Calendar invitation. So please reach out to us by email there. Next steps will be designating times and groups. So based on how people registered to participate, we'll be arranging those and sending out the session invitations. So our small team is meeting Friday. That should go out by Monday, I would say. And then what we want to close with is, what burning questions do you all have that we can either answer now or provide some follow-up on? Because I know we are just in the last 5 minutes or so here. So I'm going to open up the floor, and Laura, if you want to keep an eye on the chat and voice any questions that come through there. What burning questions do you all have that we can answer today?
This is Frank. I don't have a burning question per se, but just to clarify, and I think I already know the answer, but I just want to make sure. So for the actual discussion sessions, like today where we had the timer in the breakout room, that was really helpful. Will that already be set up prior to, or do we have to keep track of we have to kind of, in the sense of while we're in there, but what I'm trying to ask, I guess.
Yes, we'll have the timer will be set up, and one of us will also be monitoring and trying to send out those blasts to kind of let you know, like, oh, your time is halfway done, and that type of. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, it was very helpful. Thank you.
There was a question in the chat about what registration is looking like.
We currently have about 70 folks registered.
Great.
And we're meeting with another group tomorrow that is representatives of diversity, equity, and inclusion officers in the greater Cincinnati area. So that could potentially touch all 3 of our states. And so doing an introduction with that group. And so I think we'll have some more registrants from there too. Well, I am available. So I didn't book anything until 1. If anybody has individual questions that they'd like to stay on and ask one-on-one, you're certainly welcome to do that. Otherwise, we are so thankful for you all being a part of this. Thank you for joining. I hope this overview was helpful for you, and that hopefully this is a good resource for you that you might use on your campus. But if not, at least it's something that we're all doing together this fall, and we're really looking forward to being a part of that together. So we'll be on here for a few. Otherwise, everyone take care, have a great day, and we'll be in touch about sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.